Well, thank you for being here. I just want to quickly introduce the work of Dash in the way I see and I comprehend the way he is working with the memories in Cuba, and what place has this kind of work in our contemporary visual context. Because the Soviet influence, it has a space in the visual art, contemporary artwork in Cuba. It's been work through visual arts, cinema, also literature. But but usually, and mostly in visual arts, they use more irony, sarcasm, humor to talk about this period and to talk about the relation about Cuba and the Soviet Union at that point. So that's what we are, and that's a long tradition that comes from the 80s of humor and trying to address a lot of social issues, but using these kind of tools. What I think is very interesting and particularly original about the work Dash is presenting to us is in a way, like the tenderness he's presenting, and he's talking about these memories and his memories as a child. For me, as a curator, is very interested to work with this exhibition that we're preparing in. Yeah, that's the first thing that we should mention. We are working. We are going to screen this movie right now. One day in the life of Javier Antonio. But this is the part of a whole project that we are presenting in the University of Delaware as a part of the residency arts program, and the movie is one piece in all the environment of this completely exhibition. We are working with photography, manipulated photography, objects, and those are the ideas that are, for me, really interesting in the work Dash is presenting to us. So as a curator, I'm working with two main concepts. One is material culture, because we are wanting to create in this exhibition like an environment with objects that are real Dash objects from when he was a child in Cuba, and we used to have all the kind of same objects, so are very recognizable for in our community. It would be like very recognizable objects, and on the other hand, I want to work with Dash also in using the concept of cultural memory and how we can build a cultural memory around these issues. And for me, what is most interesting in the way Dash is dealing with this is the use of mnemonic devices, engaging in this whole disruptional world inside memories. He's using his personal artifacts, objects, photographs, and he's kind of disrupting the first meaning or the first significance that we can extract from that, and creating a whole different environment, a whole different history, where fiction and reality are mixed, but at the end is conveying like an approach and a kind of a process of also reconciliation with this memory, with the memory of his mother, with the memory of our own country, going through all this kind of process with the Soviet Union. And it's all here, but in this kind of intimate and very deep relation. I don't know. This is like the first thing that I want to add, but you can start talking
Thank
more.
you. It's great. Thank you very much, Maria. I just want to introduce also a special guest that we have today, Professor Colin Miller, Director of the Artist in Residence Program and Global Arts Program at University of Delaware. Professor Miller has invited me to spend 2 weeks in next February during my solo exhibition. Maria is the curator of this exhibition. And this exhibition is so connected, as Maria has stated, with memory, childhood memory, social memory, and mostly how do you connect your pain with the pain of your generation, and if healing your own pain, can you also help healing the collective emotional pain of your generation. Anyway, that's up to you after you see the movie. I just want to recap some of the, summarize some of the points that you saw on the flyer for this conversation. Just keep them in mind while watching the movie, so we can really debate after the screening. I'm more interested on hearing your opinions and creating a nice and enriching debate here. Ready? Thank you. Thank you. Really, thank you for. Now I don't know if you prefer to ask questions. If we can go back to some of these points, I don't know, Maria. I'm open to inform.
Yeah, well, for me, this kind of work is really interesting because he's using video as a mnemonic tool. He's trying to reconstruct ideas, memories in a fictional way, but using the way he's using the video with the objects. For me, this is an experimental video. It's a short movie, but it's an experimental movie in the way he's using the objects, the long, the length of the conversation of this aunt, of the grandma. That's is so typical in our culture, and all the events that you are going through one topic to another. That's very common, and I think the video actually have all this freshness in the way the conversation is developing, although we are only knowing like the grandma side of the conversation. And for me, it's very interesting. And I think the exhibition we are working for the University of Delaware is dealing with a lot of these objects, these photographs, these images, but he is manipulating all in the video. The images they must appear like the original photograph, but the ones that we are going to present at the exhibition are manipulated photography with different slight variations in the characters or the little wolf that appears in some of these footage. And that's a completely different way of dealing with this memory in Cuba, with this kind of Cuban memory of the relationship with the Soviet Union. And in the visual arts, there is a long tradition, as I said before, since the 80s, dealing with this kind of Soviet objects and ideas, but it's in a completely different way. It's more ironic, sarcastic, humor. We make fun of a lot of these ideas. Is that the way it is is usual for us? Literature is more close to that kind of approach that Dash is presenting right now. I'm thinking mainly in the trilogy of Jose Manuel Prieto, which is an important contemporary author, and he is working with this kind of memories and how he can, or his characters can reveal their own experiences of being a student at the Soviet Union at that moment, late 80s, and then going back to Cuba, and what are the the difference that like the way this generation, the generation of our parents, believe in all these ideas and what happened later, and I think that's the one of the main beautiful contradictions that the video is trying to present, and I think he's doing in a beautiful way.
At the same time, thank you. Javier Antonio is the main character of my unpublished novel, Abrir los ojos, like opening your eyes or eyes wide open. Of course, it's myself deconstructed and reconstructed. And the mother, the figure of a mother, not only as a very personal story, but also as kind of a symbol or metaphor of a generation. You know, when you grew up in some way, then something changed. And of course, the death of a mother could be also, you can also like establish a symbolic parallelism with the end of, I don't know, communism and communist ideals. I think we've talked about.
Yeah. Do you have any question or?
So I was interested in this movie. You used the Russian song, Are You Sure About You, from Natalia. Yes. So why did you choose Russian while you were healing your memories in Cuba? Did it impact Russia, the communism? Is there some sort of relationship, or is it just because Natalia had such a soothing voice and everything?
That's a good question. My native language is Spanish, but I remember my mother was a Russian literature and language and literature professor. So my mother used to sing me in Russian when I was a baby. Like, I don't think that Cossack lullaby, and you know that's a contemporary version. But for example, I remember like her voice, you know, singing me in Russian. I know it sounds surrealistic. We were Cubans. I was being, you know, like asleep, and I was listening to Russian.
That was the language that was usually introduced as a second language in the school.
Even in school, we sang together like the "Pусть всегда будет солнце." Does any of you remember like "Солнце"? Like "Пусть всегда будет." It's one of the songs that it's also in there. It was a Soviet pioneers' official anthem. And it was also the Cuban pioneers' anthem, half in Russian, half in Spanish. There's an English version also, so if you someday you have pioneers here, they can sing like. So yeah, maybe if you want.
Yeah, I think that also the way he's using like language and Russian language and all this is in an emotional way too. Is trying to get back to those memories and the ideas of the mother. And what is interesting is that here Russian is not just the Soviet Union. Is connected to mom. It's connected to the way someone used to sing to you when you were a child. So that's the ambiguity of most of the Soviet ideas or Soviet inclusions that is included in this video. And that's what it makes, for me, so interesting, that kind of use.
Yeah. Professor.
I found this amazing movie.
Thank you.
I guess it brings up memories and thoughts of my own obviously, and it does it in this very open way. It's very inviting to reflect on one memory I have of when I was a child, which is in 1956. I was at a conference, and the first time that people from the Soviet Union came as sociologists before they let them go. Very, but there was one Polish sociologist, and this was 1956, right after a speech revealing what Stalin had done to the communists. And he started talking how he had given his life to the party cause and was alive, and he starts crying. And I know there was this kind of romantic idea in Cuba about this relationship. People went out and fought, died, and then it collapsed. And Cuba collapse was just so. I think it's beautifully done.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That was the case of my mother, for example. Though my mother died shortly before the end of communism, but she was so convinced. Like, I remember she was, well, I say, like an idealist. Like, I can define her in any other way.
I think what is also very interesting about this, he is talking not about a national hero or someone that is like the common life of a mother in a family, and that's what is also so touching and deep about this kind of memories, because we are not trying to reveal any like hierarchic idea or about our history. We're trying to present, or Dash is trying to present, how the common people live this experience, how the people who were believing in this, how they were engaging in these ideas, and to what extent they were like willing to sacrifice a lot of things. And that's what is moving and beautiful, because it's like a personal relation. It's more like down to the earth, and the way common people can engage and what they do or what they did in our country following all this.
Like, we have like two.
I have.
Yeah. Okay. Please.
First of all, I never realized how much the Soviet Union really embedded the psyche of Cuba. Like, I knew, obviously, there was Castro, the model communist, but I didn't know just that image of communism and what Russia meant to the Cuban people, how that really became a part of how they saw themselves. And one thing I noticed, I mean, when I saw, thinking back to the relationship between the mother and the son, I personally interpreted less of a criticism of communism itself and more about the reality of communism, or perception of the reality of communism, driving itself away from what communism is supposed to be. One question that I had is, I wasn't exactly sure why Javier was crying there. Was he just missing his mom? Did he realize the truth in some way that his grandmother was trying to hide? What was going on?
That's thank you.
Thank
you very much. It's supposed to be like, you can think like maybe he listened at the whole conversation, so he realized about the truth, how his mother died, how his mother took her own life. Maybe he's just missing her. Maybe he's just, that's part of thank you very much. And then talk about Steve had a question.
I was in the same vein, I think for me, what the film really resonates is the power of secrets. Whether they're imposed by a regime, and then how the family works with that and imposes more secrecy. And of course, the secret is revealed. And my question was, my interpretation was he had heard the conversations. He now knows what happened. And I wondered if there had been another scene where he now keeps the secret with his family, giving it more power by pretending to his relatives that he does not know what happened. Because I think that's how secrets become so powerful and actually stifle change. And this is a very inviting piece that really reveals the truth. But I feel that there could be even more.
Yeah, thank you. No, yeah, that's true. It could be. I prefer, to leave it like this. Maybe in the novel, if you read the novel, if I translate the novel someday, like the novel and the real novel, like that's what happened. So he learned that secret, and then he started pretending that he doesn't know it in front of his family during several years. And then when he's an older teenager, then everything explodes. And what an explosion. But that you have to read the novel. In the novel, Javier Antonio. So Javier Antonio is 11 years old here. This is a how do you say? Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's before the novel, because in the novel, Javier is like 16, 17 years old. So thank you. And Tolga.
I was under the impression that you've been trying, it's another process for healing. And because at the end of the day, your secrets are in your layers that you're hiding actually. And even at that age, you don't want to bring it up and try to forget it, kind of press it down. But it comes to the point, you've heard it so much, and now it's the time you bring it on, you fight about it.
Yep.
That was But my question was also, even your pictures you brought up, in the Russians it says, солнце все весен, where it's more about the optimism. You bring the sun to the, let's bring all the time, the summertime, the sun always, the positivity is always there. I mean, is this in the Cuban culture because of the climate you were in? You're always looking forward for this. I didn't get it, but you had. I saw a lot of positive, images, and the words were under it. The Russians, as you indicated, maybe it's because of your family, mom.
That's interesting. Like Maria, if you, that's really interesting.
I did not see dark totalitarian writing. It's just really life from the daily life and bringing the sun in. I mean, based on the Russians.
Because he's talking about what his mother believed, what her mother. That's what is, and that's what it is particularly interesting and moving about the picture, about the movie. You can realize of the entire history at the end. It's kind of counting on your own knowledge about the story and on what happened. But what he is presenting is like the hope and the emotion and the engagement and all that in her mother's role, going to the Soviet Union and studying there, and that's a generational point of view, of these people going there and facing, leaving behind their families and going there to learn, to transform society, and that's what the video is presenting. And in a way, a lot of you should know how Dash thinks. This is, for me, that was really interesting about the video because it's a way of reconciliation. Dash history with his mother's ideals and the whole society. Is, for me, the whole way he's presenting this video and the way that the story is presented in this video is like a path of a way of reconciliation. How you reconcile with, we are a different generation, we think different, we behave different, we have like different expectations, but how can you relate and how can you engage also with that, with what your parents believe at some point. And that's that's why it doesn't look like painful in that way, it's not I don't know if you agree with me.
Yeah, absolutely. As a generation, we are age is a secret. Our generation grew up, with the Soviet Union in the 80s. So if you ask if you go to that memory core of our childhood memory, everything that is in there is beautiful, bright, like, I don't know, Nieva Galuboy, so blue skies, shiny sun, the future of humanity. It's like what you put inside a child's mind. So we consciously learn, for example, about Stalin, crimes and everything when we grew up. But if you go to that childhood memory, that is deeply embedded in your subconscious, there is an innocence in there. There is an image of innocence, and
It is still a beautiful word, in the mind of a child. It is not.
May there always be sunshine. Pусть всегда будет солнце, пусть всегда будет небо, пусть всегда будет мама, пусть всегда буду я. So may there always be sunshine, may there always be blue sky, may there always be mama, and may there always be me. So that's part of it. I don't know. Yeah.
I found it sad and also interesting that she was so invested in this culture and was a professor, and yet because she didn't provide the automatic good grades, was ousted out of the system.
Oh, yeah.
It's tragic.
Yeah, and that's typical. That's not that's typical.
That's typical. But don't you think that's an exception?
Yeah,
That
is not an exception. And the idea that then the punishment is to be the cook of the girls.
Yep.
That's very typical. Or they make you clean the floor in the same building where you were a professor or a researcher, and for some reason you break the rules at some point, and then you become like the end. And that's the kind of, that's not an exception. That was the way of dealing with this kind of disruption in society, with this kind of society rules.
So using humiliation.
Humiliation, it's basically humiliation.
Others as well.
Exactly. And that's why people leave, because it's like, you don't want to be...
Yeah, I think Enes, I have a question. I love your t-shirt, by the way. So,
the whole thing. I'm like minimal. I don't have any like connections with the Soviet communism, whatever. I'm from Turkey, but I was always engrossed by history, and it fascinates me how even people talk about communism's downfall, whatever, that these figures, these systems, regimes are incredibly popular in some of parts of the youth. In my high school years, I had many friends with Che t-shirts. The reason I'm wearing this is kind of as a protest against this. People would share Che Castro quotes all over social media, and I was fascinated by the sheer, the twisted narrative that's so pervasive. Turkish left in the Cold War years were they adored USSR. Even so, any critical narrative of the USSR and like communist countries is seen as highly skeptical, as some kind of Western games twisting memory. My question is, you emphasize the approach of non-resistance. Was it always like that in your life? I mean, was it the part was resistance more than non-resistance? How did you? Because I think how it's so pervasive today, it requires a level of mental fortitude to pick non-resistance.
non-resistant contemplation of memories is mine. By non-resistant contemplation, thank you for that question. That's a good point. But by non-resistant contemplation of memories, I mean, look at them as they were, without trying to change them, without trying to erase them, without trying to bury them. So look at them, leave them arise, leave them by that. I know this statement goes beyond science, but and is on the ground of my personal belief. By doing that, in doing so, when you are able to contemplate without pain, to contemplate your memory as it is, a lot of pain will arise with that memory, and that is what is going to kill you. Not running away from your painful memory, not running away from your pain, but just not fighting it. I don't know if you get the point. It's not fight against the pain. It's not hide the pain. It's just contemplate it like peacefully. Again, that's a very personal position. So, are we okay with? Okay.